Matthew Seha for Fiona Ma.
Here.
Jason Perez.
Here.
Shonda Wesley. Betty Yee.
Okay, on to item 2, approval of the February 18th, 2020 Risk and Audit Committee timed agenda.
Move approval?
Moved by Brown,
Second.
seconded by Middleton. All in favor? Oh, any discussion? No? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Call for the vote. Any noes? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. The measure passes. On to the election of the Risk and Audit Committee Chair and Vice Chair. And I will recognize Ms. Middleton.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to nominate David Miller to be Chair of the Risk and Audit Committee.
Okay, motion by Ms. Middleton, seconded by Mr. Perez. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? And a third time, any other nominations? Okay, hearing no other nominations, I will call for the question. All in favor?
We need a,
Aye.
we need a motion.
Oh, we need a motion. Okay.
I'm also move.
Okay, so moved. Do we need a second for that motion? Okay, a second, the motion would be to elect Mr. Miller to be the chair. So we have a motion by Ms. Middleton,
Second.
second by Ms. Brown. So, any further discussion? Okay, I'll call for the question on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes. So I guess I stay here. Okay, so on to the election of the Risk and Audit Committee Vice Chair. And I would move to elect Ms. Middleton as the Vice Chair. Seconded by Mr. Perez. Any discussion on that? Okay. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Okay, I would move that we elect Lisa Middleton as the Vice Chair of the Risk and Audit Committee. Is there a second to my motion? Seconded by Mr. Perez. Any discussion on the motion? I'll call for the question. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? The ayes have it, and the motion passes. So, congratulations, Lisa.
Congratulations, David.
So we will move on to the item number 4, the executive reports, and I'll turn it over to Marlene Timberlake D'Adamo.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, committee members, Marlene Timberlake D'Adamo, CalPERS team member. First, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Miller and Ms. Middleton on their retaining their positions, leadership positions in the committee. I continue to look forward to working with you, and I'd also like to welcome Ms. Wesley to the committee. I also look forward to working with you. Our only action agenda item today is the review of the Risk and Audit Committee delegation in support of the reduced complexity and risk management strategic. Oh, my tongue is tied today. The delegations have been rewritten in clear and concise language. You've heard about that from the 2 previous committees. We will present those changes to you today. On information, we have Buck Global, who is the third-party actuarial firm, and they will be Ms. Shapui, will be bringing their independent review of the actuarial valuations of the state and schools pension plan as of June 30th, 2018, and they are here today to present their findings. Lastly, enterprise compliance and enterprise risk management will provide the committee with our mid-year plan updates. The next Risk and Audit Committee meeting is scheduled for April 20th, 2020, and includes the 2020 2021 plans, annual plans for enterprise compliance and enterprise risk management. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This concludes my report. I would be happy to take questions.
I'm seeing no request to ask questions or speak, so we'll move on to item 5, action consent item. This is the approval of the November 19th, 2019 Risk and Audit Committee meeting minutes. What's the committee's pleasure?
Move approval.
Moved by Brown. I'll second the motion. Any discussion? Call for the question. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Any abstentions? Oh, an abstention? Okay. And so the ayes have it. The abstention is noted. Okay. Information consent items. I haven't had any requests to pull anything. Oh, is that a request?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a request.
6C?
6C. So I will call on Ms. Timberlake D'Adamo for 6C.
6C, that's the Office of Audit Services, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. You have a question?
Oh, are you
Yes.
on? Let me click it again. I need to click it more vigorously. There we go.
Great, thank you. Hello, Mr. Chufui, how are you? I assume you know what I'm probably going to ask you about, and that's Agenda Item 6C, Attachment 1, page 1 of 1. And this is sort of our dashboard of audit findings is what we're calling this. We see these quarterly, is that correct?
Correct.
And this is the way that this audit committee provides oversight, that we know that you're solving these audit findings, is that correct? The bars will either shrink or they will grow. I have a concern because we actually, as a committee, in open or in closed session, never discuss the findings or what we're doing to resolve them. I know when we see an audit report, you show the findings, and then management writes something, and then all we see are these little bars, and eventually, I guess they all get resolved. I mean, I just don't feel that this is any type of oversight, and what I'm hoping for is that as a committee, we could get a more detailed report. What are the outstanding items? Say, when I look at that first table, there are 52 findings outstanding between 1 and 2 years with employers. I'd like to know which employers and what are the findings and what we're doing to resolve them. And then the same with the internal audits. There are 27 open findings, and I don't know for which audits and which ones have been resolved and what we're doing to resolve those. So this is really not a way to provide oversight. So I'm hoping we could get a more detailed table, because I'm just guessing as to which items are still open for which audits.
Would you like to see just the list or details of the findings as well, the nature of the finding, what the issue was? Or do we just want to refer to maybe the report that was issued, the date of the report, and the findings related to those that are outstanding still?
I'd like to see like a little Excel table that says what's the audit, and the date of the audit, and what the finding is. And maybe if you can even give me a in progress, or sort of like you guys do with enterprise, you tell me it's in progress or it's going to be done, or when you expect to complete that. I just want to make sure that the outstanding findings aren't something really serious, like from the IT report or something like that. I have no way of knowing which findings these are, and maybe we can start with a brief outline, and then if that's good enough for everybody, I think that would be fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
This,
Okay.
should we record this as direction?
Yeah,
Okay.
I would say so. Okay, so moving on to item 7, action agenda items, review of the Risk and Audit Committee delegation. Back to you, Ms. Timberlake D'Adamo.
Yes, thank you. So this is the annual review of the committee's delegation. As has been mentioned in the 2 previous committees, this is an annual process where the committee members review the delegation. If there's any suggested changes, you can provide them to me, and those will be taken into account. This year, there were minor changes made as a result of sort of, I'll say, grammatical. We did do an update last week where we had made a grammatical change. There was a typo, which is what you got in your folders today. And then the other thing that we did was, as was mentioned in the 2 previous committees, in accordance with work stream number 3, we tried to do our best to put the delegations in plain English or an more easily read form. Per your request. So that was the major change that was done in the delegation this year.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this is an action item, so what's the committee's pleasure?
Move approval?
Okay, moved by Ms. Brown,
Second.
seconded by Ms. Middleton. So any further discussion? Okay, I'll call for the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? No abstentions? So the ayes have it, the motion passes. So, moving on to information agenda items. 8. And this is Belize Chapuis. Welcome back.
Good afternoon,
hot
Mr.
seat.
Chair and members of the committee. Belize Chapuis, Office of Audit Services. Agenda item 8A is an information item related to actuarial parallel valuation of the state and school plans. The board retains the services of an outside actuarial firm to review the work of CalPERS actuarial staff and to certify that their work complies with actuarial professional standards. Buck Global, a third-party actuarial firm selected by the board in November 2015, completed its independent review of the state and school plans as of June 30, 2018. David Driscoll from Buck Global is joining me today to present their report to the committee and answer any questions that you may have. I would like to turn it over to David.
Thank you. Yes, as mentioned, the latest audit report has been delivered. It is task number 5 under contract 2015-8123 and involves an audit of the June 30th, 2018 actuarial valuations for the state and schools plans as prepared by the CalPERS actuarial staff. We reviewed first the assumptions, methods, and procedures used and found that they are all in conformance with actuarial standards of practice. We also, as part of this engagement, conduct parallel valuations of the state and schools plans as of June 30th, 2018, which is to say that we take the same data, assumptions, and methods that the CalPERS actuarial staff use to prepare those valuations, and we independently prepare our own valuations. We found that in every case our results were quite close to those of the CalPERS actuarial staff. They are well within the 5% margin that would trigger a need for additional analysis under the contract. So we're very pleased overall by the extent to which we found that we matched so closely. Though not required by our contract, we go a step further and look at differences in actuarial valuation results on a participant-by-participant basis, just so that we make sure that we're not missing anything that is camouflaged in the aggregate by having some cases where our results differ a lot in one direction and other cases in which they differ a lot in the other direction. We found no such pattern. All of our results matched very closely. The differences between our results and those obtained by CalPERS's actuarial staff are attributable almost completely to what I would call differences in technical approaches to modeling the careers of participants and differences in rounding and things of that nature, which, as you might imagine, produce very small differences, insignificant differences, I should say, in the level of results. We did have some recommendations for the CalPERS actuarial staff in terms of content of the report. These are more in the nature of suggestions rather than strong recommendations for change. Again, we found the report to be of very high quality, as as we did the work generally. But we are recommending that some changes be made to reports in the way of the description of the way certain tables of probabilities are applied in the valuation process. This is a somewhat technical actuarial matter, as you might imagine. In terms of the way the group term life benefit provided under the plans are modeled in the valuation process, and in terms of the way that changes in actuarial assumptions are described. But again, these are refinements. These are not corrections, really. And again, we matched results closely. We found a very high level of compliance with the standards of practice under which the work is to be performed. And so we would say to the board that we believe you have ample reason to have a very high level of confidence in the actuarial work being performed for the state and schools plans by the actuarial staff here at CalPERS.
Okay, I have a few requests here. Controller Yee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations to you and Ms. Middleton. I guess on the additional comments and recommendations that you've made, the first relating to the group term life insurance benefit. So is this just a recommendation or a suggestion that there be further, I guess that this benefit be included in subsequent reports along with a methodology, or I mean, I guess I'm trying to figure out what to do with these recommendations.
Well, I think it's we believe that the benefit is being handled properly in the valuation, but that there isn't a lot of description of the manner in which it is reflected in the valuation, perhaps because it's a rather small percentage
Right.
of the liability. So just for the sake of completeness, we are recommending that additional detail be provided in the handling, regarding the handling of that benefit in the valuation.
Okay, and I guess for staff, is it because of the, I mean, is this a de minimis issue, or is it really?
Yeah. So to what Mr. Risco said, it's not how we're valuing the benefits, it's how we describe them in the report.
Oh, okay.
So they're looking for us to add a little bit more clarity in how our process is. There's not a recommendation on changing the process.
Okay.
It's just describing what our process is. So it's a little bit more clear in the report as opposed to Buck having to give us a call and get a finer explanation of the details.
Okay, all right. And then I guess that's the second recommendation, that section about the phase-in of the change of the discount rate. I guess the question would be, how is staff kind of perceiving this particular recommendation? Is this going to be what we would accept as a recommendation for any future contribution rate smoothing?
That's both in terms of when we phase in the change of a discount rate, what they're referring to is you can phase, when we phase in the discount rate, there's two ways of going about it. You can phase the impact in, or you can phase the change in the assumptions in. And what we phased in the change of assumptions over 3 years.
Got it.
We didn't just go right to the final discount rate and amortize the impact. We get to the same number eventually, after the end of the phase in. It's just a matter of how we did it, and it wasn't, as David mentioned, we weren't clear in the report that we talked about phasing it in, but we didn't talk about how we phased in the change of assumptions.
Got it. Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Perez.
On page 4 of the slide deck, at the bottom, towards the bottom half of that page, can you explain the differences in those two valuations in plain English, please?
Page 4?
4, yeah. Yes, sir.
Do I have a different page?
It's section 4, summary of findings towards the
Oh,
bottom.
section 4, okay.
It's page 4 on mine.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, this is what I was describing earlier as one of the manifestations of differences between the valuation system that we use and the one used by the CalPERS actuarial staff in terms of the way that they model somebody's career. The objective in evaluation is to allocate a projected benefit to be earned by a participant over that individual's entire career. And there are a number of different ways you can go about modeling it. And if you model the benefit the way that the distribution of the benefit over somebody's career the way that we do, you can get a higher allocation of benefit to past service than you do if you use the CalPERS approach for the particular employee whose data is represented here. You can see that we both agree to the dollar that we are talking about somebody whose present value of future benefits is worth $272,638. But the difference between the way that we estimate the service variable that is used as the basis for the allocation over that person's career leads to differences in the way we allocate to past service and current service from the approach taken by the CalPERS actuarial staff. It's not a criticism of their approach at all. It's simply a difference in approach in modeling.
It's a pretty significant difference, though, when you talk about the entry age of normal cost.
It is for this particular individual who was, I think, selected because they illustrate this phenomenon in kind of an eye-catching way. But in the aggregate, it doesn't have much of what we would consider a significant impact on results. And for that reason, we are acknowledging it as a source of difference while not recommending that anybody take steps to change it in some way.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, seeing no more requests to speak on this item, we'll move to item 8B, Enterprise Compliance Mid-Year Plan Update. Ms. Diadamo.
Yes, hi, good afternoon. So this is an annual item where we bring the mid-year update to our compliance plan. The annual plan was brought to you in June of 2019, and we are presenting you with our mid-year update. As you see, we are in the green at 50% for all three of our initiatives as well as our strategic measure. And at this point, I'll take any questions if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask. This is an information item.
Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, so we will move to 8C, Mid-Year Plan Update for the Enterprise Risk Management. Mr. Forrest Grimes. It's an information
Good afternoon,
item.
Mr. Chair, committee members, members of the board. Thank you for attending. Forrest Grimes, CalPERS team. Item 8C is the Enterprise Risk Management Mid-Year Update. And if I could get you please to turn to page 83. Let's go to the red ones. I'm sure you'll want to hear about that. This is for internal control initiative. And that one is in red because we changed our focus from really mapping high-level core processes to program activities. And we found that taking a bottom-up approach versus a top-down approach was much more intuitive to the CalPERS team, and it's been more effective. And so therefore, we have 13 very high-level core processes, which we thought we wanted to map initially, but we think that actually going through programs request to the various initiative or various processes that they would like us to look at have proven much more effective. And so that's really, for transparency purposes, a change in our direction at this point, which you'll be able to comment fully on when we bring back our work plan in April this year. But that's really the reason that that one's in red. Some additional highlights are that we modified the funded status strategic risk measure to provide more near-term alignment to the pension outlook tool, and Ms. Middleton gets the credit for having us go down that path. Ongoing reporting of strategic risk measures, as you saw in item 6D earlier in the agenda. In November, we reviewed with you the historical risk appetite evolution and how the committee applies strategic risk measure tolerances to provide guidance to the organization, and ongoing training of all CalPERS team members to continue to cultivate a risk-intelligent organization. And currently, we're over 50% trained now, and that's a number of 1,385 team members, which I'm very proud of, and it's taken the team a lot of work to get there. And this is really not a mandated training, it's really people actually coming to the trainings on their own volition, which is a really nice accomplishment. With that, I'm going to stop and see if you have any questions on any of the other initiatives that are before you.
Great. I'm not seeing any, and thank you very much for the updates. And
thank you.
We'll move to summary of committee direction. Ms. Diadamo.
Yes, thank you. I have taken one direction, and I'm going to read from it to make sure I don't get it wrong. I have here that Ms. Brown has asked for the report, this is the audit report, to be modified to include more detail regarding the status of open items. Ms. Shapui will undertake to bring something back to the committee for its consideration.
Great. Sounds great. Okay, we have a request for public comment from William Collins. Could you please come down and take a seat? The microphone's on for you on the end there, and you'll have 3 minutes to present your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I'm a retired CalPERS annuitant. I started my pension in the middle of 2013 and it was on auto deposit and out of sight, out of mind. And I received annual 1099s from CalPERS telling me how much I earned, paid taxes on the money, and then recently I had occasion to look for my CalPERS pension online, couldn't find it. I called CalPERS, do you know what's going on? They said, your money started off going to a Wells Fargo account. I've never had a Wells Fargo account. And then the money went to a checking account in Tampa, Florida. I've never had a Florida account. Then Minneapolis, I've never had a Minnesota account. And it turns out, according to my bank, I've never received a penny from CalPERS. So I don't know what happened. I don't know if it's an inside job or if it's somebody entered the data wrong. But I have no records from CalPERS about changes in accounts. I save papers. Here's a 37-year-old document from CalPERS. I save this stuff. Scraps of paper from notes of people I talk with. I have nothing electronic or in the mail from CalPERS telling me that my accounts have been changed and gone to 3 different accounts, none of which are mine. So I filed a police report. I've filed a report with the federal agency, talked to an attorney who's wants to file in Redwood City and ask for back interest payments and attorney's fees and what have you. And I said, well, let me just bring this up in person with CalPERS board and tell you what's going on. I don't know. I'm sure CalPERS now is sending out announcements, but for, about changes in accounts, I just changed my password and I did get a notice on that. So some are going out on some things, but I don't have one. Oh, and I also wanted to mention, I have other auto deposits in my checking account. One of them is a larger amount than this. Those were not tampered with, which clearly suggests to me the problem is on the CalPERS site. And again, I have no electronic communications, no email, nothing on my CalPERS site, and nothing in the mail telling me about these changes in account. CalPERS says that they're not going to cover this money because, quote, they're not insured for that. So I realize you don't sit here and dispense pension payments, but I do need some help. The amount of money I've calculated that I'm missing is about $47,000. And I'd just like to have my pension. So thank you for listening and for helping improve our retirement system.
Yeah, well, thank you for your comments, and it certainly sounds like a very impactful and frustrating circumstance, and I regret that that is happening. So Marcy?
Yes, so we'll have, Anthony Sweeney is here in the auditorium today, so I've asked him to sit down and talk directly with you about your case, and we'll get some next steps put together for you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. Okay, anyone else who wanted to speak? I will, okay. We'll adjourn now into closed session for items 1 through 3 from the closed session agenda. And so at this time, I would ask that the auditorium be cleared, and then we'll get on with our closed session. Thank you, everybody.